Hello, welcome to the next in our series of webinars for the AGI's Early Careers Network. We're fortunate to be joined by Charlie Glynn and Paul Naylor again, and they're going to be talking about careers in cartography. So this is the fourth in a series of webinars put on by the AGI's Early Careers Network, which was set up in order to help early career professionals and students to gain recognition and to receive support in the early years of a career in the geospatial industry. The AGI is an organisation which was set up to promote the interests of the geospatial community, and membership is available through potentially through your company, or if you're a student, then you can get free membership. Otherwise, it's £72 a year. So worth joining and worth getting involved in the ECN. If you're not already involved, then get in touch with us. You can email us at ecn@agi.org.uk. So as I said, this is the fourth webinar in a series put on for early career professionals or anyone who's interested. We're talking about cartography today. I'm Tim Newman. I'm in the public sector team at Ordnance Survey, and I'm joined by Charlie Glynn and Paul Naylor, who are cartographic consultants here at OS. So I'm going to introduce them shortly. If you've got any questions that come up while we're going through the webinar, then do email them into that email address, which is ecn@agi.org.uk. Or there should also be the facility to comment or to use Google's question and answer function. So either of those methods, then send them in and we'll try and get them covered. And if not, we'll get back to you after the webinar with an answer. So I'll hand over now to Charlie and Paul, who are going to be talking about cartography. So cartography, I think, is still a really relevant subject in the world, in the geospatial community. It's been recognised as a fantastic way of representing complex data, and I think it still holds the public's imagination. So last year, Ordnance Survey held a competition to design new map symbols, and that got over 7,000 responses. So still a massively relevant field, and we're really lucky to have these two guys to share some of their thoughts on careers in cartography. So here they are.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Tim. So I'm Charlie Glynn, as Tim said, cartographic design consultant here at Ordnance Survey.
And I'm Paul Naylor. Again, I'm a cartographic design consultant too. So
yeah, thanks for having us back for our second part in this series of webinars. I think Tim's going to get us onto our slides now, and we'll make a start. Okay. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, careers in cartography. Again, thank you for joining us for our second webinar on cartography. As we've said, we're both cartographic design consultants here at Ordnance Survey, and between us, would you believe it or not, we've got 29 years of experience. So here's the agenda that we're going to run through today. So we're going to do a brief recap of our previous webinar before moving through those topics that are on your screen. And Tim's already mentioned about questions. We'll take those at the end. So if you have any questions during our webinar, then please do fire them through to us, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. So thanks again to all those who watched our first webinar, and those who have since watched the video on YouTube. We're very grateful for that. So on the screen now are some of the topics that we covered back in February. So these included cartographic design principles, where to find map inspiration. We discussed the many different types of map, discussed some of the software that is used for making maps, and we also gave some tips at the end. So as you can see from this list, we concentrated more on the theory and the practical elements of map making. But then lots of the questions and feedback that we received was more about the actual careers within cartography. I think this is obviously understandable for an early careers network. So this time around, that's what we're going to put more of a focus on. So we're going to start by answering a few of the questions from the last webinar that we didn't have time to answer. So we thought we'd cover them now just briefly. So there's one about the making maps for people with colour vision deficiencies. So our answer to that would be, I think that research has shown that the really important thing to ensure is that your map features have enough visual contrast from each other, and contrast can actually be more important than the actual colours that you use. So it's important when designing a map that you think about the visual hierarchy and the various methods available to ensure there's enough contrast. So there are some combinations of colours that shouldn't be used together, but for that there are lots of great tools available to help. So there's like a ton of colour palette selection tools, and we'll often use Colour Brewer for that. And that also has colourblind friendly options within it. There's also lots of good tools for simulating colour deficiencies, which are a really useful way of checking your maps. Another question was, you say the sector really is growing. Which businesses are really starting to realise the benefits of cartography and data visualisation? So we've got to a point now where it's actually quite hard to avoid maps and location intelligence within our daily lives. So we see lots of data visualisation in the media and on TV. I think journalists are really embracing maps as a storytelling device. And there are lots of new technologies that have made it much sort of easier and more accessible for those sorts of guys. Then there are industries such as banking, telecoms, transport and utilities, and many others who are really starting to understand and utilise the benefits of GI and cartography. There's also some emerging markets around things like smart cities, Internet of Things, or driverless cars, and there are obvious benefits of sort of good, accurate location data, and also on top of that, the visualization of this data. So it feels like there are lots of opportunities as more and more of the different market sectors are adopting more and more sort of geo within their work. And the final question there, are there any sort of specific software packages purely for sort of designing maps as opposed to GIS analysis? And to be honest, there aren't many. Most cartographers will use a combination of tools. I think at the core of that is normally a GIS or graphic design package. For me personally, I think QGIS is the pick of the GISs in terms of cartographic functionality, although ArcGIS Pro looks very good as well. So sort of more maps are obviously moving to the web, and we're seeing some really good design tools emerge for this side of things as well. And I'd have to highlight Mapbot Studio as probably the best option at the moment. And that has a real focus on pure map design as opposed to any analysis. So careers in cartography. We thought that a good way to give you an insight into how people become cartographers and what career paths they take is to start by giving you some case studies. So to start with the two of us, myself and Paul, because we both had a similar route into our careers. So we both studied design at college and sort of always had an interest in the creative process, but not necessarily geography. Paul joined OS first as a map editor, and then we both became trainee cartographers way back in 2004, and we took that role alongside 12 other trainees at the time. So when we joined, we were initially put on a year-long training scheme, and we're also trained in cartographic design at the Royal School of Military Survey, and that really sort of reinforced our passion for design and also maps, which had grown at that point. And the job we do now in our role as cartographic design consultants is sort of perfect for combining both of those things. So we now make up 2/3 of what's called the cartographic design and development team, and this job has really good sort of variety. And although our favourite part is still the core design aspects and the creative process, our job also involves elements of sort of project management, some research, outreach work, and sort of knowledge sharing and teaching as well. So we get a really good variety. The other third of our team is our colleague, Chris.
So Chris had a slightly different journey into cartography than Charlie and I. Chris is originally from Coventry and came to Southampton to further his education at the University of Southampton. Here he became a Bachelor of Science, studying oceanography with physics at the National Oceanography Centre. He also became a Master of Science in Social Sciences. In 2004, Chris joined Ordnance Survey as a trainee cartographer. before working his way up to cartographer and then to cartographic design consulting, where he works today with Charlie and I. Chris shares a cartography blog. He's engaged in both domestic and international forums, and he's had various papers and articles published. He has also contributed to the upcoming book, The Routledge Handbook of Mapping and Cartography. So next I'm going to talk about Mary Spence, who was a colleague I met through the British Cartographic Society. Mary is project manager at Global Mapping Limited, where part of her work involves applying cartographic principles to enhance mapping produced from GIS data. She is also a freelance consultant, specialising in all aspects of map design. And she graduated in geography from the University of Aberdeen and took a postgraduate diploma in cartography at the University of Glasgow. Her professional career spans about 40 years in cartographic publishing, the highlight of which was being awarded an MBE in 2004 for services to cartographic design. Mary is a past president of the British Cartographic Society. She's also a chartered geographer and a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society.
So this is Caroline Robinson, who we know through Twitter and have also met at various Carto events. Caroline is a creative cartographer who runs the Clear Mapping company based in Cornwall. Her interest in maps started as a hobby more than a professional pursuit. She studied painting and drawing at college before going to Falmouth College of Art to study information design. This led to a decade of working in what she describes as a very corporate environment, designing products and packaging. She then decided it was time for a change and took a job as a GIS officer at the Cornwall Wildlife Trust. This gave Caroline the chance to develop her GIS and CAD skills, which then led her to start her own business. So the Clear Mapping company has since won awards for both sustainability and excellency in mapping. Last year, Caroline won the OS Open Data Award at the BCS event. Her company has recently expanded to now offer courses in GIS and offers help with spatial analysis as well as a service to create beautiful maps and graphics. Caroline's top tips for cartographers are thinking visually and spatially, a skill which she admits not everyone possesses. She thinks it's important to be able to recognise the difference between a map and an illustration. And her final tip is ultimately hard work. She says that maps are labour-intensive and spatially considered pieces of work, and you need to be someone dedicated to your craft. Cartography can be quite complex. You need to think of several issues at the same time, such as your audience and interpretation. And here's a nice quote from Caroline to end on. Each map celebrates the joy of creativity with the science of place. So there are lots of other examples of how people ended up in their cartographic roles. Some are very different, but it tends to be some obvious commonality amongst them. So cartographers will generally have an interest in and have often studied design, art, and/or geography, and will generally have an interest in the world around them, often through things such as geology, marine studies, or earth sciences.
So where is the best place to look for current opportunities, and what type of companies or organisations employ cartographers? Well, most cartographers are employed by commercial companies. However, there are opportunities within government, in particular Ordnance Survey, Ministry of Defence, UK Hydrographic Office, and even the Met Office. Utility companies and local authorities employ people with cartographic skills, but I think it's important to note here that these jobs may not always be advertised with the title cartographer. Air cartographers are employed by the Royal Air Force, and the Army employs cartographers as geographic technicians. But if you want to find out where to find these jobs, then there are some great places to look. Ordnance Survey have some great pages on their website called Careers at OS, and here you can access current vacancies at Ordnance Survey, information on our very popular graduate scheme, details on what it's like to work at OS, and even help with interviews and what to expect. We'll be talking a bit more about the British Cartographic Society later on, but they have some great web pages on their site too, which gives a real insight into what cartography is and what a career in cartography entails. Their pages include information such as who makes maps, what makes for a good cartographer, what are the training opportunities, and a lot more. The Society of Cartographers, or SOC, have some great pages too, and it's well worth visiting their careers and vacancies pages to find out a bit more. And you've also got the National Careers Service. They have some really great pages on their website with advice and information, including information on profiles, likely income, entry requirements, and current opportunities within the industry. What we've done now is just put some quick links up, and these links will take you direct to current roles within cartography. So it's well worth visiting these sites and setting up some job alerts to help you with your search.
So we're going to talk a bit now about the current mapping community. So I think it's true to say that there are more people making maps now than at any point in history. I think this can be largely attributed to the rapid advances in technology and the opening up of data. So it's now much more accessible, sorry, and it's sort of relatively easy for anyone to assemble a map. There's also lots of new and different data being collected by many new methods. So the role of maps in society has also changed greatly. There are now maps are ubiquitous within our daily lives, and sort of the way in which we engage with geographic data and information is changing as well. So we often use apps and services which rely on location intelligence, and we're not even aware of it. So with more people than ever before involved in the many various geo industries, there is a really rich, thriving community of mappers. The majority of people are really supportive, very helpful, and often willing to share their ideas and share their knowledge. So this is often in stark contrast to sort of previous years, where geo and cartography appeared very niche and from the outside often appeared hard to access. And newcomers and amateurs weren't always welcomed with open arms, and the industry could seem at times quite defensive. So it's great now that it's much more open and friendly, and it's much more all-encompassing. One really important aspect is that there's a real desire to share and learn from each other. The community is also really diverse. There are people working in many different industries, and this leads to a great cross-section of skills and knowledge. So cartographers are generally a very friendly bunch, which can be seen from all the great events that take place. There's also a great community on social media, which is often the chosen platform for sharing snippets of news and tips and asking questions. And Twitter in particular has been really useful for myself and Paul. That's where we'll pick up lots of news and ideas and take inspiration for our own maps as well. So getting involved. There are many ways for you to get actively involved in the mapping community. And when you're looking for a job, and showing your involvement can be really beneficial. I think it shows more than anything that you have a willingness to learn. So one way to do that is a whole ecosystem of mapathons and humanitarian work, which has been built around OpenStreetMap. And this is probably one of the most accessible ways for you to get involved. So you could join a local missing maps edit session, or even help by contributing from home. So all you need to do that is basically a computer and access to the internet. So one thing that I do in my spare time is to organise and attend a local map time chapter here in Southampton. This is something that I started back in 2014, and I've enjoyed running it ever since. So if you haven't heard of Map Time, it's a local learning resource aimed at all levels with intentional support for beginners. There are now around 100 chapters all over the world. Here in Southampton, we meet up once a month. So once a month we get together, and they're free to attend informal meetups where we learn a different topic every time. So topics that we've covered are very broad. They range from theory to hands-on workshops based on certain pieces of software. And we've also held sort of presentation evenings and discussions as well. And the beauty of these events for me is that they're very informal and relaxed. It makes for a great environment to learn in at your own pace. They're also a great opportunity to meet other like-minded people who live local to you. So it's a good way to extend your network, which can prove very helpful. It's always nice to know that you've got support of others around you. It is also very sort of rewarding as the organiser to see such a nice group of people get together every month and learn from each other. It's their sort of passion and enthusiasm that's sort of great to see, and that's what makes it enjoyable for me. So I've made some good contacts through running Map Time. I've also made some good friends as well. There's kind of a social side to it that's important to me. We normally have a beer or two and a bite to eat whilst we're mapping as well, which makes it quite fun. As well as our Southampton chapter, there are now 4 others in the UK. I'd love to see that number increase as well and see some more popping up. So if you're interested in maps or maybe just getting started with a career in map making, then I'd encourage you to start a local Map Time chapter or attend one if there's one close by, and hook up with other like-minded people who live near you. It's a great way to learn, to share knowledge, build a good network, as I say, but it's also a great way to have fun and make friends whilst you do it.
I'd like to talk a little bit now about the British Cartographic Society, which, if you want to connect with like-minded individuals, then is a great place to start. Founded in 1963, the BCS is a registered charity and one of the world's leading cartographic societies who are dedicated to exploring and developing the world of maps. They have about 800 members, and these range from mapping companies, publishers, designers, academics, GIS specialists, and really just anyone with a love of mapping. Each year they hold their symposium, which is an established training and networking event, which provides delegates with the opportunity to gain mapping knowledge from a wide range of world-class presentations and a range of interactive workshops. This is a really great event and something which I've attended numerous times and presented at or even held workshops. And it's now something I actively help support and organise in my new role as Programme Chair for the BCS. I was also lucky enough recently as well to be taken on as a member of their council, so I actually get an active say in the running and organising of the society. The BCS also support Restless Earth, which are 2-hour workshops given to Year 10 students studying GCSE geography. The workshops focus around the Japanese earthquake and tsunami of 2011, and they place students directly into the disaster zone, and they assign each of the students specific roles to help with the community. They are then kind of given a range of different scale mapping, which they mark up, showing where specific features relevant to the role they've been given need to be positioned. And the guys that organise Restless Earth, they're always looking for volunteers to help out with these workshops, and they are both rewarding and informative. I've done a few, and Charlie's done a few as well, I think. Membership to the BCS is very competitive, with a single membership costing £35 a year, which I think is pretty good value for money, and there's some great benefits to being a member. There are other events to consider. FOS4G UK brings together open source GIS users, developers and supporters for a 2-day conference and a day's hackathon. It's a great event and it's very popular, very social too. And this year it's being held right here at Ordnance Survey. There are also numerous societies other than the BCS which you could sign up to and become members, which could help you, and each have their own benefits. The Society of Cartographers' main aim is to support and encourage all those involved in the production of maps, basically, by providing information, supporting and exchanging views and techniques in all aspects of map making. Membership to them is £25, and they are the sister society to the BCS. The Royal Geographical Society, they are the UK's leading society and professional body for geography, founded in 1830. And they host a range of events throughout the year, and there are many benefits to becoming a fellow. They also host Chartered Geographer, and this is the only internationally recognised professional accreditation for those using geographical knowledge in the workplace. There are many benefits to achieving chartered status, but I think this quote from a GI team leader sums it up quite nicely. It opens doors for you professionally when you are looking for other jobs, but it also with your own development. It gives your employer a reason to invest in your development, and it gives you a professional standing. And another way for you to get involved and get your name out there and recognised within the industry is to submit your maps or map projects to some of the many awards that run each year. The British Cartographic Society support 5 awards each year in conjunction with Avenza, Stanford's, Bartholomew's, Esri and Ordnance Survey. The Stanford's Award is for Best Printed Mapping, the Avenza Award for Best Electronic Mapping, the John C. Bartholomew Award is for Best Thematic Mapping, and Esri supported BCS with a UK New Mapmaker Award, which is kind of given for those starting out in cartographic or related industries. And we at Ordnance Survey support an Open Data Award for excellence in the application of open data. These are all presented at their annual conference gala dinner, which is held at their annual symposium, which I mentioned earlier. SOC, or the Society of Cartographers, run the Wallace Award for excellence in cartographer, but you do need to be a member of that society in order to enter. And then you've also got the International Cartographic Association, who hold an international conference every 2 years. And at this conference, they hold a map exhibition, and this contains map products originating from ICA member countries, which the UK are a member, and they are exhibited with an international jury selecting the best entries in various categories. So what does it mean to be a cartographer, and what are the skills and education that is needed? Well, a cartographer interprets the world around him using art, science and technology. Therefore, to be a cartographer, you'll need to have a good awareness of the world around you. It helps to have excellent computer and IT skills. And if you've got art and design skills, this will help you to produce maps in a variety of ways. To work as a cartographer, you will usually need a degree in a relevant subject related to cartography, such as geographical information systems, geography, earth sciences, geophysics and geotech, marine sciences, and oceanography. Other subjects like surveying, civil engineering and graphic design can also be useful, as these provide the skills and knowledge needed to help analyse and work with geographical data. A postgraduate qualification can be helpful for entering those more specialised areas of the industry and for career development later on. And postgraduate courses are available in different areas such as remote sensing, photogrammetry, geomatic engineering, GIS, oceanography and surveying. So once you're in a role, what can you expect?
Okay, so I recently did a search for cartography roles online and found that there are generally a core set of skills that are required by most of them. I then found one job listing that required all of those skills that you can see on your screen now. And you read that, it's like, wow, you know, it's an awful lot of requirements for one person doing one job. So I think this sort of thing can understandably seem daunting to an applicant. And it is true that cartography requires a large skill set. It can be a varied role, but when you see it listed out like that, it can seem unapproachable and intimidating. So the reality of a cartographer's job is obviously different to this. So don't let this sort of job listing put you off. You certainly won't need to be an expert in all of those different software packages. The likelihood is anyway that you'll be using a core set of technologies, or you'll soon learn which ones you're most comfortable with. So it's true these days that lots of cartographers are at least in some part self-taught. Technology moves on and updates so quickly that success in this field is often determined by a person's willingness to pick up new skills. So it's advisable to keep up to date with the latest technology where possible. But again, it's not possible to learn it all. So make sure you choose things that are going to add value to your particular job. And as well as the core GIS and design knowledge, a cartographer is likely to need some knowledge of sort of project management and have good presentation and communication skills, as you may be required to talk at conferences or host workshops, or you never know, maybe even host webinars. Okay, so that kind of brings us near the end of today's webinar. We hope you find some of that information useful. We hope to share these slides after today so that you will have access to all the links within there. We've got a few more slides which we'll just flick through now that just contain some links that we hope you'll find useful. So there's some links around current opportunities, and these are links to where you can find current job listings. And we've got some links for events. So there are some really good events in our industry, and this will point you to a few of those, and it's well worth attending. And here are some places where you can find some extra information as well. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. We're going to take some of your questions now. Paul and I's contact details are on the screen there, so you are more than welcome to get in touch with us directly, either via email, or there are Twitter handles as well. So you'll always find us on Twitter, and we'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Charlie and Paul. Really appreciate you sharing those thoughts with us.
You are welcome.
I think it's really valuable to hear how people have started their careers and how different career paths can lead to the same job, but also some of the kind of key skills people might need. And also really interesting to think about different ways you can get involved kind of outside work. So joining things like BCS or joining map time, or even creating a map time in your area. So I think that's really interesting, even if you're not a cartographer primarily, if it's just part of your role, or if you're just interested in what to sort of have.
Absolutely. I think doing those extra things outside of your role is what we're trying to focus on today. Can just almost set you ahead of the pack by showing your sort of keenness and willingness to learn more. And also
absolutely.
Share, and that's really important.
Yeah, and Paul, you mentioned the Chartered Geographer programme. So again, that's something that the Early Careers Network is really keen to support and promote. So if that's something you're thinking about taking part in, then do get in touch, and we'd be happy to kind of help on the first steps of that.
Brilliant. I think it's important to point out with that Chartered Geographer that by attending a lot of these events, that helps towards getting to see the key points that are needed to help actually achieve that Chartered Geographer.
Yes, no, excellent. And also awards are a great way of sort of getting points, and by the sound of it, there are a lot of things you can enter. So go for it. So start off with a question here from Sarah. Was it always your ambition to become cartographers?
Honest answer, probably not. I always wanted to be a graphic designer, if I'm being honest. That's where I kind of saw myself going. Kind of loved geography, loved design at school. Went on to college and did a A-level in design. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Saw an advert pop up for Ordnance Survey for a data editor on their land plan products. Applied for that, and the rest is history. But what I love about my role is, I've developed as a cartographer, but then when I kind of had the opportunity to become a cartographic designer and kind of help start and embed that cartographic design team back however many years ago it was that we started it, and then I've been able to kind of take that design slant that I have and push that into our products and service. So.
Yeah, so the same sort of my experience of that is very, very similar. We share a lot of common ground on that. So I was always interested in design, did design at college, knew I wanted to sort of progress that further as my career. Joined as a cartographer at Ordnance Survey, and have kind of developed my love and appreciation of maps over the years working here at Ordnance Survey. I think, everybody else's passion for that has sort of rubbed off on me as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And now, it's something I really, really enjoy. I think the variety of the role is one of the most important things.
Yeah,
we get to. We're lucky in that sense that we get to work on many different projects and different types of maps as well.
Yeah, and we get to see a lot of good maps and a lot of bad maps.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that fits nicely with the question we've got here from Pete, which is what the worst map you have ever seen is.
Anything by this man.
I don't know, it's hard one to say, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. I mean, we
Don't like to be too sort
No,
of
critical of
judgmental.
people.
Yeah.
But we quite recently ran a map critique session
Mm.
for a masterclass that we gave at our Geovation Hub. And so for that, we kind of collated about 4 maps that we found online. But one of the slides in particular that I used for that was of a bus map, which was a really good design. But its key message was, what buses people needed and where would those buses take them. But it didn't do that. It didn't actually tell you where those buses were going. So, from a design point of view, it looked fantastic, but its actual message, which was, what bus do I need and where's it going to take me, was completely missing. So,
Yeah. Okay. So apologies to the designer of that map.
yeah,
Shame if not
Remain-
whoever that
remain
is.
nameless.
Yeah. Well, you, Charlie, have you got a worse map?
No, as I say, not one in particular.
No.
I think the map is successful if it meets its user requirement. It's hard to be too critical of maps. I think map critique, as Paul mentioned, we've used in workshops recently as a really important way to improve your mapping as well. But yeah, I'm not going to call out sort of one map in particular.
No,
I'll do that.
Yeah. So potentially a tricky question to answer. That's just coming from Mike about whether you can see yourselves staying in cartography for the rest of your careers, or do you think it's the sort of thing where you kind of have to diversify and take on new roles, potentially always keeping a cartographic component? How far can a career in cartography take you?
Well, I mean, I'd love to stay in cartography. I love it. Like I said earlier, it wasn't something that I thought I would do, but I've got into it. I've grown to love it, and hopefully I continue to do it. I've been at Ordnance Survey now for 17 years, I think, in a role that involves cartography in some sense. So long may that continue, I say.
I think there are lots of skills as a cartographer that are probably transferable into other roles if you did want to take that step. An obvious thing to progress is to move into sort of management and maybe lead a team of cartographers. I think at the moment, it's really exciting. I think there are lots of opportunities for sort of, it's not always bannered as cartography, maybe more data visualization and information design. But I think the key skills of a cartographer are really relevant in these sort of new and emerging industries as well. So I think there's a ton of opportunity to stay as a cartographer, although your job role might not always be cartographer.
Yeah, interesting. One final question, and slightly more light-hearted, which is if you had any data source available to you, I think that can be completely unrealistic if you want, that you could use to make a map with, what would that be?
Good question. Well, our colleague Chris Wesson recently produced a map of Mars, which was something new for Ordnance Survey, mapping another planet. So I guess if we could have all the other planetary data available, then we could create a series of mapping that maps our solar system. So yeah,
Very cool.
I think that'd be quite nice.
So I think for me, it'd be really interesting if we could have the location data for every mobile phone in the country. So yeah, there are clear privacy issues in doing that, but it'd be really fun, I think, to track the movements and see how people are moving around the country and do it as a time lapse to see over a day where the traffic goes and all this sort of stuff. That'd be cool, but yeah, obviously not as readily available as other data sets.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Well, thank you very much, both, again. So if we haven't covered your questions, then we will be in touch. We haven't had a chance to go through everything at the moment. So yeah, worth going through the slides when Paul and Charlie make them available. There's lots of extra information, websites, things to join. So do get involved with cartography, even if it's not your primary role. Just a few things to highlight coming up with the ECN. We've got 2 events, one in Bristol on the 13th of July and one in Manchester on the 24th of June. So if you're local to those areas, then do check out the ECN website, which is part of the AGI's website, to find out some more information. And we'll also be putting up details for the next webinar, not confirmed yet, but keep checking the website, and there'll be an email, I'm sure, around the next in the series. So thanks very much for joining, and thanks again, Charlie and Paul, for a really interesting talk.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Cheers.